All right. Yalimadat, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great day and keeping well and safe. Thank you all for joining us for another Show Me How session. Today we have something very special prepared for you. We have the amazing baker Sophia, who's going to be showing us how to bake red velvet cupcakes today. And without further ado, I would like to pass it on to Sophia. Sophia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Yasmin. Hi, guys. I'm Sophia. I'm going to make some red velvet cupcakes with you. Okay, so we'll go really slowly and we'll try and make these amazing red velvet cupcakes. They're really delicious and I hope yours taste as good as mine by the end, and I'm sure they will. So if you grab your cupcake tray, and we're just going to line the cupcake tray with cupcake cases. So we just pop them in. You can use different colors. I've got pink and I've got purple. So I'm going to alternate between them. Earlier on, I used unicorn ones. So whatever floats your boat, you can be creative and use whichever cupcake cases you like. If you don't have cupcake cases, that's not a problem. You can just grease the actual inner aspect of the cupcake tray, and that would be easy to get out of the cupcakes a bit later on. Yeah. So if you have cupcake cases, great, but otherwise you can just grease them with a bit of butter. So once you've lined your cupcake cases, you can just pop them aside. And now we need to just make sure our oven is preheated to 180 degrees, 180. Yeah. So those of you who can get some help from your parents to help you along, okay? Just with preheating the oven. So I'm just getting my mixing bowls ready in the meantime. So I have two different sizes of mixing bowls. The best thing to do is to use the smaller mixing bowl if they are different sizes for the dry ingredients. So I'm just going to run through the dry ingredients first with you so you have everything ready to go. So we need 140 grams of flour. Then we need your bicarbonate of soda. If you don't have bicarbonate of soda, you can use baking powder, and we can talk about how to use baking powder when we go through it. And I've got cocoa powder. If you don't have cocoa powder, you can even use chocolate powder. So it really is quite flexible, this recipe. So I'm going to just also grab my sieve and pop that on top of the mixing bowl. And then I'm just going to sift this through really slowly. And what I find helps it along is just tapping along on the edge of the sieve to help with the sifting process. So it's tap, tap, tap. I'm going to warn you from now, this recipe requires a lot of elbow grease if you don't have an electric whisk. So I'm going to try and do it with you guys without an electric whisk, just to show you it can be done without one as well. So sift, 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 and that's great. So I'll just leave my sieve on there, okay, and go through the rest of the dry ingredients. So I've got my bicarbonate of soda. If you don't have bicarbonate of soda, you can also use baking powder. And what I would do here is, instead of for bicarbonate of soda, you need 1 teaspoon. For baking powder, you need 3 teaspoons. So it's triple the amount for baking powder. So I'm just going to place 1 teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda in the sieve. And then I'm going to pop 1 heaped teaspoon of cocoa powder. Well, now I like my chocolate. I don't know about you guys. So I'm going to put a proper heat in. However, just bear in mind, the more cocoa powder you put in, the less red the cupcakes turn out. So if you really want a red velvet cupcake, then maybe add not such a heaped teaspoon as I am. But I love the chocolate flavor, so I'm just going to go for it. Great. So now we've got our sifted flour, our sifted bicarbonate soda or baking powder, and we're going to sift the cocoa powder through. Sometimes I find it's a bit granulated at the end, and you can use the back of your spoon just to help with the sifting process, just to make it, just at the end, just to make it slightly quicker. Great. That's all sifted through. I'm going to give you a few moments because I know I went through that quite quickly. So it's 140 grams of flour, 1 teaspoon of bicarbonate soda, or 3 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1 tablespoon of cocoa powder. Perfect. So at this point, I would just grab your spoon or a spatula, and I would just mix that all together. And then really, we can just place our dried ingredients to the side. So you can see that it's all just kind of, you just mix it through, and you should kind of get a slightly darker, floury mixture there. And I'm also now just going to grab the larger bowl. So I just want to skip ahead for one moment and just talk about the buttermilk. So for those of you, the buttermilk we don't need right now, but for those of you who don't have buttermilk, what you can do now is if you can use plain milk. And with the plain milk, you can add 1 teaspoon of vinegar or a tablespoon of vinegar. So lemon juice or vinegar, and add that to the milk, and you need to set it aside for a few minutes. That's what I'm telling you now. So in case you don't have buttermilk, that's an option for you. Yeah? You can just use plain milk and add either a tablespoon of lemon juice or a tablespoon of vinegar. And if you just leave that aside, and then that will become more fluffy and will become more buttermilk-like as the more we leave it to stand. Yeah? Okay. So now, going back to the next step, we need butter and caster sugar for the next portion. So I'm going to use 115 grams of butter and 140 grams of caster sugar. And I'm just going to place that directly into the bowl.
Sophia, we have another question.
Yeah, of course.
How much milk is needed?
Okay, good question. 125 milliliters.
Thank you.
So it's 125 milliliters of milk. And with the milk, just add either a tablespoon of lemon juice or a tablespoon of vinegar, and then it will leave it to stand, and then hopefully it should become more buttermilk-like. Okay, so I might just let people get their milk sorted before I jump ahead. Okay. So as you can see, there's lots of caster sugar. So it's not the healthiest of recipes, I do admit, but it is a very tasty one. And, you know, it's a treat Eid is coming up on the weekend, so we're allowed to treat ourselves once in a while, but I wouldn't say this is an everyday recipe that we should make, for sure. So I'm just pop the butter and the sugar, the caster sugar, directly into the mixing bowl, and I'm just going to mix it up now. Okay, I'm just going to combine the ingredients a little bit. Preferably, if possible, softened butter that's been out of the fridge for a while would be useful, because it will just help with the ingredients and combining the ingredients together when you whisk it. So I find that's quite useful. But if you don't have that, if it's not soft, that's not a problem. What you could just do is just mix it even more thoroughly, and eventually it will soften, and then the mixture will combine. That's fine. So just mix, mix, mix. And when you're mixing, you'll notice that the texture of the butter with the combination of the caster sugar, it changes. It honestly is like magic. It becomes slightly lighter in color and changes before your very eyes. Oh, I can see people have got a standing mixer, which is even better. So there's lots of elbow grease, lots of mixing involved in this recipe if you don't have an electric whisk. But if you do, actually, it's pretty quick. So it is very doable. You just keep going until you kind of have a creamy texture and it starts to develop that creaminess. So often I find it sometimes gets stuck in your whisk, and that's not a problem. You just kind of scoop it out with a spoon, and that will remove the mixture from the whisk, which is great. So as you can see, I'm going to just place it closer to the screen so you can see it's kind of you can see it's quite like creamy, and it's a lighter color now. You see that? Yeah. So that's what we're aiming for when you do this. Perfect. So we've got our caster sugar, we've got our butter all in here, and now we're just going to place an egg. We just need one egg, whatever size. If they're medium, large, it doesn't matter. We just place that egg directly into our mixing bowl. And actually, when you mix this together, you'll find that the egg helps loosen the mixture, and it makes it a lot easier to whisk. So you'll be grateful for the egg if you're doing this by hand. I'm certainly grateful. So keep going, keep going, keep going. Whisk, whisk, whisk. Build up those muscles. Ready for team sports when we're able to do that once again. That's great. So that's what that kind of light mixture. See what the consistency is just like. It's like that. So it is pretty thick, but a lot easier now we've added the egg in. So everyone's added their egg. I'm going to move on to the next. So we've got our flour mixture that we had in the separate bowl. So we need to get our flour mixture back into place, and we're going to pour half of the flour mixture into the larger bowl, into the mixing bowl. So we're going to just pour, pour, pour. So it's just a guesstimate of how much you think is half. It is not an exact science. That's, I suppose, part of the fun of baking. It's not. It's more of an art than a science. What I found about baking is that, you know, it can be very therapeutic, and I've grown to really enjoy it and do a lot of it during the lockdown, and I found it very therapeutic. So I hope you guys find it too therapeutic for yourselves. So I poured half of the flour mixture in as well, so you can see it changed color from that light creamy color to a light brown. So just keep mixing. Going to go to the next portion then. So we've added half the mixture of the flour. Now we're going to move on to the buttermilk. So if we didn't have the buttermilk, hopefully we've used normal milk, 125 mils of normal milk, and added either vinegar or lemon juice, a tablespoon of either. Yeah. Okay, so if you have buttermilk, great. If not, don't worry. You can even use plain milk. It's not a problem. Okay, so I'm just pouring 125 milliliters of buttermilk. The difference between buttermilk and normal milk is just slightly thicker. It's got a different texture. So that's what kind of changes. That's what is unique, more unique to a red velvet cupcake than other cupcakes. Not all cupcakes require buttermilk. So again, this kind of loosens the mixture up even more and becomes even more liquidy. Then we're going to add the vanilla extract and the red food coloring. So I hope you guys are with me. So we add buttermilk, vanilla extract, and food coloring. So with the vanilla extract, it's a teaspoon, and for the food coloring, it's a tablespoon. So I've added in the buttermilk, 125 milliliters, and now I'm going to move on to the vanilla extract and the fun bit, the red food coloring. So we get the reddish color of the red velvet cupcake. So I'm just going to add the vanilla extract in now. 1 teaspoon. And pour that right in. And 1 tablespoon of red food coloring. And if you really like that red coloring of the red velvet cupcakes, you can even add 1.5 tablespoons. So you can really change what you want and kind of adapt the recipe to your liking. So you might add a little bit extra, and that's fine as well. I find that the cocoa powder makes the mixture slightly more brown, but I do enjoy the taste, so I add quite a bit, as I mentioned earlier. And now you'll find that the consistency will be very, very runny, but we've still got to add half of our flour mixture still to go. So don't worry at this point. Stir, 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 whisk, whisk, whisk. Okay, and now we're going to add the rest of the flour mixture. And then you'll notice that it'll become slightly less red in color. So it's good if yours is very red now, because it's going to slightly dilute down. And you'll notice by adding the extra flour as well, you'll notice the mixture actually thicken up. So you're doing really well, guys. Keep going. That's what you're aiming for. Just
mine is just like,
okay, put it in. Put it
has
back.
yours thickened?
yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe if we put the flour in, it might.
It might loosen up.
Yeah. Can we put the rest of the flour in?
Yes, I put the rest of the flour in already. So put the rest of the flour in, and hopefully that will help the mixture combine. That looks great, Ayan and Zia. That's perfect. Okay, great. So I'm just going to, this will be a lovely treat for this weekend. So I'm just going to run through those few questions again so everyone's up to speed. So I put all the milk into the bowl. In terms of the red color, it was 1 tablespoon, but I added a bit extra just because I like the red color. If it's too thick, then if it's not like this kind of consistency after you've added all the flour, you could add more milk to loosen it up a bit more. Again, so initially we had the dry ingredients. In a separate bowl, we had butter and caster sugar. We beat that together. Then we added 1 egg, then half of the flour mixture, then the buttermilk, 125 milliliters, then the vanilla extract teaspoon, and then the red food coloring tablespoon. And then at the end of that, I added all of the flour mixture in. Okay, so this is where we grab our cupcake tray again, and we place that down and pick up a spoon and pop some mixture into the cupcake cases. The trick here is not to fill the cases to the top. So you want to fill them halfway. Halfway is perfect. Sometimes I'm slightly tempted to add in extra because I always want to use the mixture, but that's completely up to you. I'll leave it for your creative ingenious to come into play here. If you want extra cake, go for it. But the right way to do it is probably just fill it halfway. So I'm just trying to be careful and placing the mixture into the cupcake cases. So I'm just carrying on spooning some of the mixture into the cupcake cases. If you drop some in between the cupcake cases, that's not a problem. You can just get a damp cloth and clean that away. So I'm just continuing to do that. Oh, I've just dropped a bit. So I'm going to just grab a damp cloth and clean that away. And the best thing to do is do it now, because if you pop it into the oven with a bit on the actual tray, it will stick to and it will burn on the oven tray. So it's best to clean it up now before it gets into the oven. That's great. Just finishing up the last few. Okay, hope you guys are still with me. And it's always better to undefold them initially, because then you can always go back and add extra. So So that's really not a problem. And it's harder to take the mixture out than it is to put it in, but so that's another little tip for you guys. Using a 2-spoon technique, that's also another idea as well. And avoid spillage. I'm going to give everyone just a few more moments everyone to make sure that they fill their cupcake trays, and then we can place it in the oven and put a timer on for 15 minutes. I'm going to pop mine in the oven now and put it at 180 degrees for 15 minutes. So what we need at this point is another mixing bowl. So you can use your old mixing bowl with the flour in it. That's absolutely fine. I just happen to have another one, but you can use that one as well. That won't ruin the, because there's only a little bit left in there, so that'll be fine. So if we just grab our old mixing bowl, the one we used for the flour, and get that ready for the frosting. So for the frosting, we need cream cheese, we need butter, and we need icing sugar. The frosting will be cream cheese, butter, and icing sugar, okay? And the cream cheese will be 140 grams, the butter will be 85 grams, and the icing sugar will be 300 grams. I'll obviously go through this again as I'm going along and doing it, so don't worry if you didn't catch all that. There's a lot of icing sugar, and the reason for that is because I find that it makes the mixture stiffer. And it's easier to pipe. If you're not going to be piping, or you're going to be using a spatula, which is perfectly fine as well, to frost your red velvet cupcakes and ice them, you can. That's fine. You can use less icing sugar, and use 280 grams, use 20 grams less. So that's also an option as well. So we need the cream cheese going in first, and then the butter. So it doesn't matter either or. We've got the cream cheese, we've got the butter, and we need to just combine the two together. So I'm going to just grab another spatula and combine the ingredients together. So I've got 140 grams of cream cheese and 85 grams of butter. We're just going to combine that together. I'm just going to pop this aside now. So just keep combining the two ingredients together and just blend them together with a spatula. I find this easier because it's quite a thick mixture to use a spatula rather than a whisk, because I often find with a whisk that actually it all just gets stuck in the whisk and it becomes quite difficult. So that's the only thing. But I think when we add the icing sugar, that using whisk is helpful. And for the icing sugar, I've got 300 grams of icing sugar. Now, after you combine the cream cheese and butter, we're going to add in the icing sugar. And the icing sugar is slightly a longer process, because if you sift it, then it's quite a lot of icing sugar to sift. So I'm going to just start. I just do it half the contents at a time, because it's quite a lot, and I have a relatively small sieve. And again, I'm going to be using the tapping method to help the sifting process. So tap, 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 combine, 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 depending on where you are. So keep going. Perfect. And I'm just going to finish off with the rest of the icing sugar. So as you can see, it's lots of icing sugar. So it's not that the healthiest cupcake, but cupcakes aren't supposed to be healthy. So this is definitely a treat. Okay. this, tap, tap, tap. I'm going to use the back of the spoon method again, just to help the last bits along. And now you can see the fine icing sugar powder going directly into the cream cheese and butter mixture that we combined earlier. So initially I'm just going to be using the spatula again, just to help combine it together, and then depending on how I get on, I might use a whisk as well. So just keep combining. I told you there'll be lots of elbow grease in this recipe. And you'll see it will start to become thicker and it will start to combine, and that's what you want. You'll see that it's turning more of a yellowy color. And the fine icing sugar is eventually combining. So just have that patience. Actually, I think it's combining quite well with the spatula. But if you find that it's not and you need a bit of extra help, you can use a whisk as well. But I think actually you can do it with a spatula as well. Either way, it's fine. Really get in there and really just try and combine it together. Okay, so you should end up with something. So I'm now going to show you how I pipe the frosting onto the actual cupcake. I know your cupcakes are still in the oven, but that's not a problem. I'm just going to show you ahead of time, so you're able to do it when they're out. Here I used unicorn cases. As you see, I'm very proud of them. Okay, and these are what the cupcakes kind of look like when they come out of the oven. Mine are slightly more browner, especially because I've added more cocoa powder. But if you added more red food coloring, they will be more red, and definitely on the inside they're very red. Okay. So what you can do is use your piping bag, and I fill some of the frosting into the piping bag. I don't want to fill it to the top because then it becomes really difficult to pipe. And then if you fill it to the top, you might have some coming out of the top because you've overfilled it. So with this, you don't need to fill it to the top. So you just fill it halfway or quarter of the way. And I find that if you put it in the fridge for half an hour, then that stiffens the mixture and makes it easier to pipe as well. Okay, so I've got my red velvet cupcake, and I'm going to pipe it on from the outer periphery to the center of the cupcake, okay? So out to periphery, and I work my way in. There you go. And that's hopefully what you guys are trying to aim for. And if you don't have a piping bag, that's not a problem. What you could do is use a plastic food bag and snip one of the corners and fill that with some icing frosting, and pipe that onto your cupcake. When the cupcakes are out of the oven, I often find that it's better to wait 20 minutes, 30 minutes for it to cool before doing the piping. But if you are very keen, that's not a problem. And The only thing that you might find is that it melts slightly, and that's fine. But if you're hungry, go for it. A good trick to test if the cupcakes are done is you could pop a toothpick into the center of the cupcake, and once it's done, it will come out clean. If you find that you have some batter sticking to the toothpick, then actually you might need a few more minutes in the oven. Yeah, you might find it needs a few more minutes. So that's a little tip just to check that the cupcakes are completely baked. Okay. So I'm just going to decorate another one now, but I'm going to use a spatula method just to show you how it can be done and looks just as good. So with this recipe, you make 11 cupcakes because the 12th one you want to use for decoration. So I'm just using a spatula and I'm going all the way around the edge and just applying the frosting on. Okay. And with one of the other cupcakes, you just snip a bit off in your hand and just crumble. Crumble, crumble, crumble. That's my cupcake done. I'll just grab that in a minute. Crumble, crumble, crumble. And then I sprinkle that. You can sprinkle it from a height to add more flair. And if you've made any mistakes with the icing, that's not a problem because the sprinkles cover all those mistakes. They're your little saviors. And that's it. That's more of a classic red velvet cupcake, and that's the more funky one.